Hi everybody, my name is Jin Ben and welcome to I Home Church. This week I would like to speak on the topic of reality of faith. I know that many of you have been extremely busy preparing for the holiday season just around the corner. So many people in queues and in lines getting ready to prepare for all the lovely gifts that will go under the tree or wonderful dinner parties that they are preparing for. And you see a lot of people running around almost in a frenzy, kind of in their own world. And sometimes you cannot help but feel sorry for a lot of these people because they are so burdened by their guest list and the list of presents that they have to prepare for, and you wonder, are they really going to have a chance to enjoy the holidays after doing all the work that they have done? And we certainly pray that everybody can. But we know that holiday seasons tends to be a very, very stressful time. And so one of the things that I have noticed working for I Home Church is that we have the section called where people can write in their prayer request. And usually as we get closer to the holiday seasons, people are kind of getting ready, anticipating the difficult family get-togethers or, all the different dramas that they've kind of tended to avoid throughout the year. But the holidays have a way of bringing people together. And this is where a lot of unresolved situations or conflicts or issues get to take center stage. And thus, Hollywood takes certainly great pains in giving us a lot of comedy shows based on holiday seasons and family gets together. And I think those of us who have extended families or have been through some holiday seasons with quite a bit of drama, we know why the comedy shows that Hollywood provides are extremely funny, because they are so close to the reality of what we are experiencing. And so in preparation for these family get-together, we receive lots of prayer requests. And probably on the top of our list is prayer for strength and prayer for strength in faith. And then, of course, you have a whole litany of prayer requests, let me hit the jackpot, help me help me to receive a brand new house, or make my relationship better, and all these things. But probably the single most important prayer request that we get is something to do with the state of our faith and whether I Home Church can really help the brothers and sisters around the world to have an increase in their faith. And so all these prayer requests that are coming our way to I Home Church made me refer back to this passage in the book of Luke, in the Gospel of Luke, and it's chapter 17, verse 5-6. And chapter 17 is dealing with the issue of discipleship, what it is to be a disciple. And Jesus is addressing some of the things that the disciples really should think about or reflect on or work on. And in Luke 17:5, the disciples ask Jesus Christ, how can we increase our faith? It says, the apostle said to the Lord, increase our faith. And the Lord answered, if you had faith the size of a mustard seed, you could say this to the mulberry tree, be pulled up by the roots and be planted in the sea, and it would obey you. This passage is extremely important to me, and I think it's really Jesus's attempt to convey to the disciple how we should be thinking about what this word faith means to us as believers. Because many times as believers, we tend to kind of treat the word faith as almost like looking or seeking in the darkness of the sky an incredible star that we can follow. And as long as we have our sights on the star, all we have to do is be guided by it and follow it and obey it, and we will be men and women of faith. But the problem is when we see faith as something that exists elsewhere that we are guided by, then any time that star somehow implodes and disappears, or explodes and disappears, or somehow we feel that the star isn't the star that we thought it was, then our faith evaporates with it. And so the problem that Jesus here was addressing to the disciples when they were asking Jesus, please increase our faith. In a way, it's the disciples asking Jesus again, solve our problem. We know that our faith is not big enough, and so please solve it for us. And how does Jesus answer? He answers by, in a way, putting the question back to the disciples, saying, if your faith was even as small as a grain or the size of a mustard seed. So Jesus kind of used this almost like a language of supposition. If you had this, then you would be able to do that. But that also implies that when Jesus looked upon his disciples, that the disciples didn't really have in Jesus' eyes or in his heart the kind of the faith that would be unshakable or unbreakable, or as my father calls, absolute faith. And so what does Jesus do? Jesus uses a metaphor, an example, and he says, if your faith was even the size or the grain of a mustard seed, that means even if it were as tiny as that grain of a mustard seed, there are many things you could do. You could do the impossible of telling the seed that grows into a mulberry tree, uproot yourself and plant yourself in the sea, and the tree would obey. And what Jesus is trying to kind of provoke the disciples to think about is, what does faith really mean? Am I talking about your lack of the quantity of faith that you think is the problem in your life as a believer? Or am I alluding to something else? And from my vantage point, I think Jesus is not talking about the quantity of faith that his disciples have or do not have. But what he is addressing is the problem of the reality of faith. And so he uses the metaphor as a seed to kind of help the disciples understand faith is not something that you look outward to be guided by, be it whether it's a person or a star or something that you feel that you can follow. But what God is really compelling and propelling his disciples to think about is to think about faith as that seed of a mustard, as that grain of a mustard seed. And the thing that's really, really kind of interesting that I find nowadays is that many times when you meet with different believers and they talk about their life of faith, many times I've heard the imagery, or they use phrases like, I carry my faith with me wherever I go, almost as if faith is like a backpack. And many believers do almost treat faith like a backpack. You put it on your back, and whenever you go out against the world, it almost becomes your armor. And when you come back home, then you put it away and prepare for the next day. And then when you go out again, you put on your backpack. Or when you want to hike around the mountains, you carry your necessities with you, water or crackers or whatever, or power bars or whatever. But faith is almost becomes like an accoutrement, something that you have to carry around. And that's something that we kind of need to look at and think about. Because when Jesus Christ uses the metaphor of a seed, one of the things that we hear all the time is that, my faith is not big enough to see God, to hear God, or my faith is not strong enough to understand what's going on. So many times when it comes to the issue of faith, if you don't see it, if you don't feel it, then we're going to toss it out the window, not realizing that it has to be treated like a seed. And one of the things when we think about, for instance, planting a garden or planting a seed into the fertile soil or the garden that we have prepared, we are literally taking that seed and putting it into the warmth or womb of the darkness. The seed, the only thing it knows, it's going on the ground. It's dark. It cannot feel anything. It doesn't know what's going to happen. Many times it feels like that the seed is lost. But what Jesus is saying is it's like a mustard seed in that the faith needs to be planted by every human being through our 5% responsibility. Because as we're taught in the unificationist understanding of life, God does 95% for us to really achieve in becoming this incredible, compassionate, true love sons and daughters of God. But that final portion that my father, the Reverend Sun Myung Moon, have called the 5% resides in the responsibility of the individual. And that's where our free will comes into play. So even though God has prepared the world and different things for us to experience life in a way that we can grow and mature into incredible sons and daughters of God, we are responsible for that 5% responsibility to decide for ourselves what we are going to do each day, how we are going to invest our lives, and who or what kind of a person we want to be in the course of our journey that we call our life. So when we think of faith really being that seed that needs to be planted, it's really all the questions like, well, I don't see God, I don't feel God, and therefore God doesn't exist. I am sure every seed being planted in the ground must feel that way because it's dark. You don't know where you are. You feel lost. There is a certain amount of trust that is needed when you are the seed, that the planter will do you right and have planted you in a fertile soil, in a wonderful garden that is going to nurture you and really take care of you so that you can be in the time of harvest when you become this incredible mulberry tree. But we don't know. But we still have to trust and have confidence when that seed is being planted in the dark, deep darkness of our souls. That a place that many of us are not too keen on traveling. That's where we have to plant our faith. And the thing about the seed is, even when it sprouts or when it breaks ground, and it can finally feel the warmth of the sun for the first time, or realize that the wetness that it has been feeling is actually water that is helping to nurture and helping it to grow. Before it understands all of these things, we have to understand that if the seedling is not in a place that is conducive for it to become a mulberry tree, then certain things can knock it down during the process. And so faith is kind of like that, in that even if it breaks ground, even if we come to a point of, okay, I feel God, I can feel the warmth of His love. Even when we have our aha moments in life, we will continually have different and more profound and incredible aha moments in life as we go forward. But we realize that every seed experiences something unilaterally. And it doesn't matter what kind of a seed you are going to go through 4 seasons. You are going to go through spring, summer, winter, and fall. And if you happen to be a seed where you were thrown into a part of a world that doesn't have the full 4 seasons, you are not going to be able to take root and become this incredible mulberry tree. But most of the world's fertile ground do have these seasons. And so you have a chance to experience different things and hopefully become the mulberry tree that we all are. And one thing that I think that we kind of tend to focus on in our life of faith, especially when we prescribe to a certain theological understanding of the world, or when we believe in the certain tenets of a religious community, and I being a unificationist, well, the church over the years has done a really great job of telling us what to do as believers. They're very good at saying, do this and do that. These are a list of all the things that you need to do in order for you to become a really good member. But I don't think that we as a church community emphasize enough not just what we should be doing, but who we are in the essence of our being. We are God's sons and daughters, despite the fall that the Bible talks about, and despite the providential restoration that has been going on for a very, very long time. We, at the heart of who we are God's sons and daughters, and that is where we have to start off. And we have to understand that instead of, our faith being something that is guiding us through life, our faith is a means of establishing a relationship with God, or a relationship with our true parents, or means of us really establishing a relationship with our parents. So instead of the faith being something out there, something that we just need to follow and obey, it's something like a seed that we need to plant deep within the dark recesses of our soul and our heart, and nurture it on a daily basis. And so for me, faith takes on 3 different very important steps in my life. And the way I like to think about it, I always tell myself the reality of faith. You're basically either going to use it, you're going to use faith, utilize it every day to become that compassionate, loving son and a daughter of God, or you're going to lose it. And one thing that we don't understand is that faith is an ongoing process. Faith is something that develops as we use it, as it is used. Faith does not develop in a petri dish. Just because you say that my faith is like the grain of a mustard seed, and I'm going to put it in a perfect laboratory setting, and I'm going to put it in a petri dish with all the nutrients that it requires, and it's going to take full root and turn into a huge, incredible mulberry tree that you and I are. It does not work that way. Faith develops as we use it on a daily basis. So just as the seed needs to be nurtured with warmth of the sunlight and with water and with tender loving care, this work of developing as we're using it is another way of basically saying it's a life of prayer. Prayer is when you work on the inner action of what is going on, the development process, the actual using of our faith in a daily basis that helps us really substantiate or establish this mutual relationship with God. And the second factor of the word faith that many people, I think, sometimes don't realize is this understanding that faith not only just develops as it is used, but secondly, faith matures through interaction. In a way, that's why our father, the Reverend Sun Myung Moon, always said that in order to be fully a mature men and women of God really expressing and applying and substantiating true love in our lives, we have had to work on our faith or our understanding of who we are. And in our understanding of who we are as sons and daughters of God, engage in an active work to really experience and deepen our wisdom about our life and about our relationship with God, and really grow in depth in terms of the profundity of the actual maturation process that is required of any faith. Be it, I standing here in New Jersey as opposed to somebody in Nairobi or somebody in Australia. It doesn't matter. We as sons and daughters all need to go through this process of maturation of our faith, and that really comes through interaction. We need to interact with each other. And so when we do that, then the third factor of faith that we need to be kind of cognizant of is that our faith is strengthened through testing, through challenges. Many times we don't like difficulties in our life. We don't like challenges in our lives. But how do you know the reality of your faith if your faith has never been tested? In other words, for us to have unshakable faith, it's kind of implied that you are going to be put into a shakable situation. And I think a lot of people who've kind of seen faith as kind of your backpack or a star up in the sky, well, if your backpack doesn't fulfill your needs anymore, out it goes. Or if your star doesn't live up to our understanding of what we wanted the star to be, well, there it goes. And so we become incredibly shakeable in that our faith is defined by what the other does or does not do. But when true Father talks about absolute faith, being men of absolute faith, what he is talking about is faith that is absolutely unshakable, because it is rooted in the deepest, into the darkest, innermost place of our being. And in a place where we cannot see, where we cannot feel, we have to, in a way, learn how to trust our parents, our heavenly parents. And through that first step of deciding to trust, deciding to believe, we slowly decide to make that ultimate decision of planting that little seed and work on that seed, take care of it on a daily basis over the course of our life, to become that men and women of unshakable faith. Anything that happens outside of our life is not going to shake us, because we have worked on developing our faith as we have used in our daily life, because we have worked on maturing our faith through the interaction with God, with parents, with our family, with our brothers and sisters all around the world, and because we have strengthened our faith through tests and challenges, and thereby have grown into a man and a woman with unshakable faith. And so I find it quite profound when Father shared this message with us many, many years ago. In March 29, 1959, Father said, "What does heaven long for? What does God ultimately desire or want?" He said, "Not for believers, but for those who practice and substantiate their faith in their life." Father is making it very, very clear, like the way Jesus tried to do using the metaphor of the grain of the mustard seed, that what God and what heaven is longing for are not just simply people who believe or people who follow or people who are guided by some extra ordinary forces outside of ourselves. But what Father is saying that heaven is longing for are people who practice and substantiate their faith in their life. Basically, what he means is we need to transition from being mere believers. And I think being believers is an incredible step towards being men and women of true love, where men and women, knowing who they are, not only believe in their faith or have trust and confidence in God, but faith becomes flesh. They become the embodiment of it. In essence, they become the owners of their faith. And that is what our true Father, the Reverend Moon, is teaching through this message. He is saying God is not looking for believers. God is not looking for men and women who just simply follow and do what the church asks you to do. But what heaven and Father and Mother, true parents, want all of us to do is to really reach deep inside to our innermost, deepest, darkest place, and there plant that mustard seed. And through daily practice and through loving actions each and every day, become the mulberry tree that Jesus Christ talked about. Because if you can become such a mulberry tree, it doesn't matter what God asks you to do. It doesn't matter if God says, okay, uproot everything that you are and go elsewhere. Put yourself in the bottom of the ocean. Plant yourself there. These are impossible scenarios. The mulberry tree will not be able to survive in the ocean, but it will obey, because basically your faith, it doesn't matter how impossible a situation you find your faith in, because you own your faith and it is you will be unshakable regardless of the challenges, the tests, all this whole lot of shaking going on. And so I find it quite interesting, when you look at the Gospel of Luke and you kind of read and reread over the years, the chapter 17, verse 5 and 6. In a way, the lines that precede it is Jesus' teaching to the disciples. Look, even if somebody sins in the course of one day 7 times, as long as they want to make a brand new start, you have to forgive them. In a way, Jesus was teaching to the disciples the importance of forgiveness. One of the qualities of discipleship that the disciples need to have in order to bring the good news forward to the world, because Jesus was preparing the disciples to do just that, was this ability to forgive. And, Jesus takes and uses the number 7, but the number 7 is really kind of a representation of limitless. Even if people, sons and daughters of God, engage in limitless sins, as much as 7 sins a day. And I'm sure, if we kind of had almost like a Skype into what the disciples were hearing when Jesus was saying this, I'm sure a lot of them will be thinking, oh, Lordy, Lord, hallelujah. How are we going to handle all of this limitless sins that we see around the world? How is Jesus, expecting us to forgive all these people? But that is exactly what Jesus was teaching the disciples to do. Even if somebody sins 7 times a day, you still have to have that heart of forgiveness that defines you as a disciple of me, of Jesus Christ. And so here is Jesus talking about the limitless kind of forgiveness, or the heart that is capable of really digesting all of this forgiveness. And then the next line that Jesus tackles with his disciples is this giving them a new kind of an understanding, or a point that they need to reflect on and meditate on in order for them to become true disciples. And here you see the disjunct between the disciples and Jesus, because the disciples can only see, okay, what is the quantity that I have to fulfill? How can I make my faith bigger? The apostle was asking, increase my faith, Lord. But Jesus was answering that question from a totally different perspective, because what he wanted to do was, guys, you guys are so caught up in thinking how to increase your faith that you are missing the boat. It's not how big your faith is. The problem is the reality of the faith that we're living. Are we in our real time being men and women who practice and who substantiate our faith in our daily living? Because if we were, we should be in the mind of Jesus Christ. Be that men and women of God, of incredible compassion, understanding the need to forgive and to help love and to encourage people to unite. Otherwise, how else do we introduce the concept and the importance of true parents and the blessing to 7 billion people around the world? If you only want to witness to perfect people, good luck. There aren't going to be too many to go around. But 7 billion sons and daughters of the world need to come and be awakened in the beauty of the blessing and the message that our true parents are bringing to the world. So how should we be? We need to be cognizant of the reality of our faith and understand that our faith is something that is not something we follow out there. But we need to be more than just believers. We need to be owners of our faith. And that's what our true parents are speaking about. Because when we become owners of our faith, no amount of shaking in this world is going to shake us out of our faith. Because it's a part of us. It grows with us. It grows in us. And we're maturing together. And that's the beauty of really learning how to work and bring our, not just our physical body, but our spiritual body in unison, so that we can really become a whole and a beautiful shining light to the world. So brothers and sisters, yes, there's a whole lot of shaking going on, and there always will be. But if we understand that our purpose as that seed, faith is like a seed, and the purpose of the seed is to bear fruit, is to yield fruit, then we realize we have to learn how to embrace the seed, work with our seed, grow with our seed by learning to develop our faith as we use it in our daily lives, understanding that our faith matures through interaction. It needs the work. It needs the active daily work in order for us to interact with our faith on a daily basis. And faith is strengthened by challenges and tests and difficult obstacles. So if we understand that we are in the work of really building and owning this unshakable faith, well then every day of our life should be a life of gratitude, having this opportunity to do just that. But more than that, more incredible than that, is the fact that we have our true parents here with us. Our true Father up in heaven and our true Mother here. We have our true parents that the whole world has been waiting for thousands of years. So brothers and sisters, you and I are incredibly blessed. So we need to trust and be confident in the Lord, our Heavenly Parent. And we need to trust and be confident in our true parents. And just remember to work on our faith and strengthen it, develop it, and help it mature by practicing it and really helping it to become a substantiation or an embodiment in our lives, in that we can become this incredible, compassionate man and a woman of God. So God bless and have a great week. If you have any questions and comments, please leave them below the video or go to injinmoon.com and use the contact form. And don't forget to subscribe to our email list. And for those of you who want to contribute to our work here at iHome Church, just click on the donate button. Thank you.